People who grew up middle upper class, what did you not believe about low-income households, but it was actually true. That a vacation isn't yearly, it's a once-in-a-lifetime event. I'm going on my first vacation at 23 and people always call bullshit that I've never been on one and always ask me why. When I tell them I lived in literal poverty, they always ask, "You couldn't have saved up a little money to go to the beach?" No, Jeremy, we're trying to get enough money for dinner. Thought food stamps were a stamp book you trade for specific food items. Did not know utilities could be turned off due to non-payment. Did not even realize people didn't pay their bills. My family talks a lot and asks a lot of questions. My husband's family found it very offensive at first, assuming we were prying, and they were ashamed of their answers. The kid not going on the field trip wasn't uninterested. His parents didn't have the money for him to go. Many of us thought he was just a bad kid. Same thing with homework. My parents assisted appropriately. Other kids had no help at all. Some kids didn't have money to play sports in school. Some kids had to work and give their parents their money to pay bills. The list goes on forever. I have learned so much from my husband. That some kids only got hand-me-down clothes and rarely got something new of their own. I went to private school and there was a girl that I assumed was on scholarship financial aid, and she always smelled really bad. I saw her putting on deodorant in the bathroom once, and I guess I must have stared a second too long because she told me that she didn't have anything clean to wear because her mom didn't have money for the laundromat that week. I couldn't believe that people had to wear dirty clothes until they could go to the laundromat. I just thought everyone had a washing machine in their house. A high school by me recently added a laundry room for students to use if they had a need. They can talk to the coordinator, move loads between classes, and have clean clothing available by the end of the day. Not something I couldn't believe, but something I didn't really realize. The temperature of the house is strictly controlled in the houses of lower income people that I know. When I was a kid, I'd turn the heat up to 80 and set the AC at 65. I grew up in a middle-class home and am now a teacher in a Title I, aka lower income, high school. I always knew that there were people who were less fortunate, but my first year of teaching has been a real eye-opener. 5 to 7 kids sit in my room during lunch every day. I noticed that one student either didn't eat or had a Coke and hot Cheetos. I learned that he only sometimes had lunch money, and if he did, it was only $2 to $3. This December, many students didn't have enough warm clothes. And of that portion, most walk 1+ miles to and from school. Many don't have the money for school supplies, let alone lab fees. Only some classes have lab fees. Mine don't. I bought big boxes of granola bars and paper, binders, etc. to give to the kids whenever they need, but as a fresh from college 22-year-old with $45,000 in debt, there's only so much I can do. It sometimes breaks my heart, but I hope being a good teacher and mentor helps them in ways that money can't. Just FYI, Title I schools give free breakfast and lunch to everyone who chooses to get it. Some of your kids may not know that. They don't have to qualify, get their parents to sign papers or anything. Just get in line. I work in a Title I school as well. We do offer free, reduced, and full lunch. The only downside is that to qualify for free or reduced lunch, the parents have to fill out paperwork. And a lot of these parents are afraid of giving out information. They have arrest warrants, collectors, etc., so they won't fill out the paperwork. It sucks for the kids. Well, my dad grew up extremely poor, and because of this he worked very hard to make sure we were middle class and that myself and my siblings were better off than he was. The one story he always told us that I almost couldn't believe was that in school, can't remember what grade level or how old he was, but he had an art assignment to draw his favorite pair of shoes. He didn't have a favorite pair. He only had one pair of sneakers that he had had for over a year. They were ratty and gross, but that's all his family could afford. He was embarrassed and didn't do the project, and his teacher pointed it out in class, so my dad just walked up to his desk, took a shoe off, placed it on the teacher's desk, and just said that's why. The teacher didn't know what to say, so my dad took his shoes and sat back down. That story always blew my mind and made me realize how lucky I was, since I didn't have to worry about where my shoes were coming from. That actually I now drive my mom crazy because I make sure to use my shoes and other clothes as long as I can, even though they are extremely old, but it makes me feel a little better knowing I'm using things to the fullest rather than until they're out of season or anything like that. That some people can't afford to fill up their car with petrol. I loved when I used to read articles of money-saving tips hoping for something new to me. When they started out with, "Save $5 a day by cutting out pricey coffee drinks," I knew I could just close the tab because if I had $5 to spend on coffee every day, I sure as hell wouldn't be walking to work the last 3 days of every pay period because I was out of gas. That was a few years and a couple of jobs ago. I no longer struggle to buy gasoline. Most of those articles are written the same because there's no money-saving advice to give people who are already stretched to and past the breaking point. Just how little money people are paid. When I was younger, I figured that approximately $40,000 a year was the lowest someone could earn. LOL, minimum wage full-time is about $12,000. I checked because I thought you were full of shit, and yep, $15K before taxes, way worse than I thought. And that is assuming your minimum wage job will even give you full-time hours. Most places won't give you more than 30 hours per week, so you'll typically work 2 jobs to make $15,000. Most places full-time is what makes you eligible for insurance. eBay had employers keep people under a certain amount of hours just so they won't have to pay it. That some people have never been out of state. I thought that everyone took vacations multiple times a year. Me too. I also didn't realize that flying was expensive. During spring break, my friends and I decided to fly somewhere, and we found out that one of the girls had never been on an airplane because her family never had the money to do so. We were all shocked because it never occurred to us that flying was considered a luxury. I felt like an idiot afterwards. Some people literally cannot go to the doctor. If they get sick, they just hope that they get better or they fucking die. That's it. Same things with pets. Some people can't have pets because if the pet gets sick, then they can't afford to help it. Man, that pet thing. Growing up, the idea of buying a pet was foreign to me. You'd be outside and a cat or dog would just click with you and you'd bring it home. You didn't even think about vet care because you didn't even think about healthcare. Both were just things for people with money. So you just take care of each other. If you got sick, the pet would do what it could to comfort you, and if the pet got sick, you'd return the favor. Never saw it as cruel not to take them to a vet. The idea just literally didn't occur because you don't even go to the doctor yourself. There's just no money. I always thought people talking about their fridge being empty was an exaggeration. Like there's plenty of food, just nothing you want to eat. Then I started dating a girl who didn't have a lot of money, and I opened the fridge door and saw only Hawaiian punch and ketchup. And I was just like, well, shit. Grew up dirt poor in the country. Things middle-class people didn't believe. People don't live in single wides because they like it. They do it because it's all they can afford. Out in the sticks, a double wide with good underpinning is middle class. Having a garden is not a whimsical thing that people do for kicks. It can be the only way you eat decent veggies. A space heater is how you stay warm when keeping the trailer heat on will result in $400 utility bills, and that's more than rent trailer mortgage. I learned to shoot a gun at 12 because I had to help put food on the table. A single deer is good meat for a long-ass while. If there is a snowstorm, canning keeps you alive because the power will be out for 2 weeks sometimes. My grandmother literally fed 10 people one winter for a week and a half. People join the military in relatively high numbers because it's the easiest way out of crushing poverty, or about the only way they're going to college. My wife and I grew up very blue-collar. Now we are doing quite well for ourselves. What was really hard for us to realize is how much people rely on each other at the blue-collar level. People don't have much, so they have social networks to help each other out. Go to any blue-collar neighborhood and you'll see kids outside playing, adults out socializing, people working on their cars, etc. Go to an upper-middle-class or wealthy neighborhood and for the most part you won't see those things. Poorer people need their social network to survive. The difficult part for the upwardly mobile is that once you make enough money to leave blue-collar life, the social protection tends to go away as well. Randy down the street isn't going to fix your furnace for a case of beer. Your neighbor Jim isn't going to help you dig that hole in your yard in exchange for watching his kids so he and his wife can see a movie tomorrow night. Stuff like that does happen with the wealthy, but not nearly as much as with the lower-income folks. To us at least, it seems like the more a person gains in wealth, the more they lose with a sense of community. I could be wrong. My wife and I have seen our income triple in the last 3 years. We just moved to a middle-class neighborhood from a working-class one. I've talked to my neighbors twice. I asked about the work being done to their backyard and they told me who they hired and what they're doing. My old neighborhood, we all would have been in the backyard either digging or helping plan. Then we'd spend the next 20 minutes in my yard seeing what could be done and organizing a work party. I ride horses and I was shocked to learn that one of my friends had never been on a horse before. Her response was, "Horseback riding in America is not a poor person thing." I moved to Boulder a few years ago and I constantly have to explain why I don't know how to do things like tennis, golf, skiing, etc. I even was poor growing up with rich people and I never learned them. Do you have a similar story? Leave a comment and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more videos like this one.